welcome to another episode of Lifting Lowdown, the industry podcast brought to you by Lift and Hoist International. My name is Guy Harris, and I'm the publisher of LHI, the magazine servicing the global industrial lifting sector. This is where I invite people from the industry in joining me to cut through the formality and discuss topics in a relaxed and friendly manner. For regular listeners, neither of my guests need much of an introduction, if any. On this episode, I am joined by Ross Moloney, Chief Executive Officer of the Lifting Equipment Engineers Association, and as usual, Rich Howes, Director at Bridger Howes, a niche PR consultancy with a client base in the lifting and material handling sectors. This time round, we thought we'd openly reflect on 2020 and look ahead to 2021, as well as discuss some of the ongoing initiatives spearheaded by LEEA. So, without further ado, let's get into it. Chaps, welcome to Lifting Lowdown. I should say welcome back, Ross Moloney. Thank you very much for returning. And as ever, thanks for coming on again, Rich.
It's a pleasure, Guy. Yeah, thank goodness 2020 is nearly done. We'll probably talk about that, but yeah, it's good to be here, yeah.
I have a feeling that's probably going to be the overriding theme of this chat. And let me start by saying, wow, what a year. Who wants to go first? Who's brave enough to start?
Well, I'll start because I'm on my phone. Like I'm sure as all of us have, I get these memories that come up. You know, so you get photos that you took 12 months ago, and it popped up today. My youngest daughter, who would have been 5 at the time, at the nativity that she was at.
Okay.
And I'm like, 12 months ago. There is no way that we were seeing this 12 months coming. You know, the world felt normal, and you know that all right. Everybody has that sort of December sort of it's a bit melancholic and stuff, but wow. I mean, because 2020 for us at LEEA went. Obviously, I think we all sort of knew that something was happening in January. To be honest, I thought it was going to be another SARS, another Ebola, and so it was going to be out there and it was going to be dealt with somewhere else. Did any of us think it was a global pandemic in January? It wasn't until February. I was actually out with a member in Cairo, and we were looking at arranging a golf day out in Cairo for members out in sort of Northeast, North Africa, Middle East, and it was like, it was a really nice trip. And I was in the car with him, stuck in Cairo traffic. He placed an order for face masks. And whilst I was in the car, they came back to him and said, we're only accepting orders of, I think, 200,000 units on face masks now.
My goodness.
It was then it really hit me. It was like, this is a big deal. And the markets are responding. So I came back from Cairo, actually with a dry cough. And it was like, end of February, March is when we started putting in sort of mitigating plans and measures, because it was like, this isn't just one of those normal things that's happening.
No, agreed. I mean, when we spoke around that time as well, Ross, I mean, we were both fairly optimistic, I guess, weren't we? We were saying, look, we're relatively fit people as our family members. If we get it, then so be it. I think we could contend with it, and we sort of played it down rather, didn't we? Almost dumbed it down.
Yeah, well, I think that it was in the spring. Everybody was saying, "Oh, it's just the flu."
Yeah.
Well, all right then. Yeah, it'll be a bit rough, but yeah, I remember that one. I mean, and at the time, conversations don't seem important, but then you think, I wonder why I've remembered that. It really did lodge that the markets were responding as if something was kicking off, and I'm like, I think the market is actually ahead of news channels here. There's something happening. There's a demand that we're not reporting. And then, yeah, March 23rd, lockdown started, wasn't it, in the UK?
That's right.
So it was, wow, it happened quick.
And we've just been speaking off air, of course, that this lockdown feels very different. I mean, we've sort of come out of it, but I mean, it's a very checkered board, isn't it, really, what we're looking at in the United Kingdom? I speak to clients all over the world, and obviously different situations in different regions of the world. But I mean, it's felt particularly depressing this last month, this previous lockdown. How have you coped with it, Rich?
Yeah, not fabulously. to be honest with you, I found it quite difficult. My missus and daughter have dealt with it a lot better in the house. I think, look, we've got to be careful how much we talk this down, and we should throw this forward, really, shouldn't we, to next year and be positive, particularly as stakeholders in the lifting industry, because we've done okay and we're in the game. And I was listening only this morning to an interview on Sky News with I think it's the outgoing boss at Fulton and Mason, and he was talking about kind of they're doing okay because of the people are still consuming food, tea and wine versus other stores that might be more reliant on apparel and that kind of thing. And I'm thinking, you really the food, tea and wine for most of my clients and LEEA's members, there's still been a requirement for it. It's been the lifting and rigging gear, and manufacturing's been up and running, and supply chains have been open, construction's been on, major projects have still been going ahead. So I'm sure many of my clients wouldn't appreciate me taking such a tone, because they might say, hang on a minute, Rich, we've really struggled here. This has been, you're playing it down. You try running a rigging shop. But having said that, I think there's a lot of positives to take, and I think a lot of our clients and a lot of the industry has done okay. And
Agreed.
I think there is positivity. Look, it's a horrible cliche, isn't it, that this kind of depression, and that it's not normally associated with pandemics, but people say of recession and that it cleanses a marketplace, doesn't it? But definitely there's been some movement and definitely I think it's favoured the companies that were better set up, better run, and of course the ones that aren't have struggled. But personally I have found it difficulty, and I've got massive sympathy for hospitality and retail, and because I'm not in that wheelhouse, and I'm lucky. That's just luck. We've spoken on this podcast about why people find themselves in the lifting industry, and it's just proven, and I feel massively fortunate to be here. Massively fortunate.
Well, I mean, Ross, you could probably talk a bit more intelligently on the entertainment side of things. I mean, we don't want to dwell on it too much, but I mean, I have friends and colleagues, so to speak, who work in the entertainment industry. I mean, that has just been absolutely slaughtered, hasn't it? I mean, decimated.
Yeah. I mean, LEEA is a, as you say, there's sort of two ways that we can look at that. In that, LEEA, we cancelled our show in 2020, and I think we cancelled that quite quickly. I forget exactly when, but there was this sort of temptation of, going back to March, it'll be all right, and then we sort of, because I get on with the board, so it's my relationship with the board isn't, oh, don't speak to them. Actually, we had weekly board meetings the end of March, start of April, so that we were, as close to the curve as we could be in terms of what was actually happening. But we pulled Lift-X very quickly, because the last thing that I wanted to do was, we'll wait. And I always thought there was two issues that we had to get in touch with here. The first one was the global public health pandemic, and it was just a case of, can we actually do this thing? But the second thing was about balance sheets. That it was a case, when you have events are investments, and they're sort of speculative investments often, when you attend one.
Sure.
And it was a real, even if we can have it, are people going to want to be at it? Is it going to be a priority, or is it going to end up being a bit of a skeleton show? So obviously we pulled Lift-X, so I know that we directly impacted on the entertainment sector in that sense. And it's probably worth saying something about the entertainment sector in 2021. So as things stand at the moment, we are still planning to have Lift-X in 2021, and we've got one scheduled for the Middle East, and we're going to have one in the UK. But you try finding a venue at the moment. It's very difficult, and I've got a theory that all of these exhibition halls, so your Telfords, your Rico Arenas, places like that are sort of not quite the NEC, but maybe the step down from there.
Sure.
Are offering extremely favourable terms. And so I think there's still a lot of speculative bookings being made by people that aren't exactly sure, but they're getting a date in the diary. And they've got these lovely terms where actually you can, you pay very little deposit and you've got 3 months and, you might lose 10% or whatever. And so I look at that entertainment sector and think, still hard to tell what's going to happen there.
Yeah.
It's almost like there's just been people putting down dates. And I've got a family friend that works in entertainment that's got made redundant last week. They wouldn't be making people redundant if they were confident that they were coming out of it. So there's that sort of front line, my experience of buying exhibition space and looking to run a show. But then there's the other bit of, lifting, Rich is absolutely right that, it is tea, wine, jams, but also it's a very niche sector that looks after entertainment. And, we've been speaking to members that work in that sector, and some of them haven't done a whole lot since February this year. They've been in hibernation, and it's a case of, do we shut up shop? Is everybody on furlough? So it's that sector is the part of our membership that I think, wow, I'm glad I'm not, I'm glad I'm not relying on that. That's a huge pivot that's been required to keep them going.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hugely sympathetic for anyone who works in that specific sector, and a personal desire of mine, once this is all over with, is actually going to a gig or a festival, and let's hope they come around pretty quickly. And just before we move on, it's good news to hear that LEEA are intending to go ahead with a 21 LiftX. Let's hope that happens.
So that is our intention, but I know we're talking at the end of the year, but I think as Rich is saying, this isn't over.
No,
and so things are still fluid, and so we have plans and intentions, but who knows? I think I probably got a bit carried away when I heard about this vaccine, and I'm like, yeah, awesome, we'll be fine, we'll all be taking it. But then I'm like, oh, it's going to take a while for that to wash through the system, and then how do we actually handle vaccine passports or equivalent? So I think I was probably a bit gung-ho, and now I'm thinking, this could take a while to really wash through till normality comes back.
I think there was a little bit of a coming back down to earth the last sort of couple of days. I spoke to a lot of people at the start of the week, and they were very upbeat. And I spoke to a colleague, friend of mine out in the States yesterday, and we were just comparing notes a bit like we are now, and we were talking trade shows and possibilities of doing it in the spring. And 1 minute you think, oh yeah, okay, there's a chance, and then you think, hang on a minute. At the moment, I cannot have a cup of tea with my mum.
Yeah.
That's the reality of it. So how do we get from me not being able to go and have a cup of tea with my mum to thousands of people walking around an international exhibition that's being pumped full of air conditioning?
yeah,
Now, I know there's some strangeness about what we can and can't do, because my daughter Talia can sit in a classroom with 30 kids all day, and that's fantastic. I'm glad she's at school, and so is she. But you have to acknowledge the fast that she can't go and have a coffee with one member from that class. So as a young person, she's got to get her head around that. So there are anomalies in this, but the reality is that to change the way where we are now to where we need to be to walk around an expo, and what form are those shows going to take? I mean, for me, a show, it's a holistic experience. It's about networking. It's about drinking. It's about sitting on people's stands, kind of chewing the fat. It's not just here's my wares and stay 2 meters away. So you've got to think about that, those whole event communities, and each show's different, each audience is different. I get it, but really the essence of a show is more than just a pop-up marketplace. And it just feels we're just so far away from it. I really hope in a few weeks, months, or get into next year and it feels different. But I'm just a bit pessimistic, unfortunately, about the trade shows and the way we do business. And I'll stop there because we can come on to maybe how people are changing and thinking more about how they're going to address audiences next year. But I don't know. I'd love to be at a trade show in the spring, but
let's try and remain slightly upbeat and positive if we can. We don't want to depress our listeners too much. I mean, yeah, I mean, there's obviously still major concerns. There's still some good news, but let's cling on to some of those positives, like a life raft, you know, in the middle of the Atlantic. I mean, one of the things that I think has been proven time and time again throughout the pandemic, this year obviously, is the resourcefulness of our industry, the vitality that our industry brings to the global economy, and that is something hugely positive. And also, I would say that companies and individuals have had to learn quickly, and the scope for doing that has been massive, and that's all really positive stuff, and I think we need to acknowledge that. Would you agree?
yeah, I agree 100%. I mean, look, it goes back to what I was saying at the start, and hopefully this podcast does what good podcasts do and polarizes opinion, and we get a bunch of comments from people saying, you know, how dare you talk it down? We're in the game, we're doing well, and you'll get a bunch of people on the flip side saying, you know, what can't you acknowledge the pain we're going through and etc. So, and I think it probably will. But look, absolutely, there's been positives to take, lessons learned, the way companies have adapted, embraced technology, and the way they're now using that to, I mean, just to labour that point, just the technology and the social media side of it, I've already seen a step forward, particularly with small businesses, because it kind of leveled the playing field in terms that small companies could interact and engage with larger businesses. It wasn't, the barrier to entry was lower because anyone could send someone a pitch or reach them on Instagram or share their content with them. It wasn't a case of having to try and get to the top of an ivory tower to make a pitch to someone. So we'd already kind of achieved that, I think. And I think the step that we've taken now, and this is where it's going to be interesting for trade shows, is I think people are now thinking more globally and internationally, because they realise that they can use technology and they can use shipping and e-commerce and that kind of thing to maybe expand geographically as well. So it's going to be very, very interesting to see what people's routes to market look like as we kind of get post-pandemic. Of course, there is a school of thought that this is going to, people are just going to, as bad as it's been and as long as it's drawn out, that actually people are going to forget about it and drift into old habits. But it's going to be interesting for sure.
Ross?
Yeah, I think just something Richard said there that really sort of struck with me about, trade shows are, as much as we try and think that it's possible to run a global trade shows are probably at best regional shows, maybe if not national shows. So certainly when we run a show, we do get visitors. When we run a show in the UK, we get visitors from elsewhere, but they are not more than 50%. Our UK show is attended predominantly by UK representatives. And so I have started thinking about how you have a physical presence, a physical thing that also broadcasts globally. So an example being the AGM of a trade association. So very few people get excited about attending an annual general meeting of a trade association, and LEEA's not distinct or unique in that. And I've chaired an AGM that took about 2 minutes, where you literally reappoint the auditors, blah blah blah. There you go, thanks. You know, it's a legal thing, and so LEEA's always been sort of minded to turn the AGM into a consultation exercise, a chance where we stand up and have the opportunity to have eggs, bricks, whatever it is, thrown at the governance side. And this year we did, but so despite that determination, you get 20, 30 people turning up. And then is that a good sign or a bad sign? You try and interpret the data like that. And, you know, it's a tough one. Whereas this year we had the AGM from Huntingdon, but we had it on Zoom. And we had like 200 people from across the globe all there. And I did think, you know, how do you run an event that's actually got that coverage, but also combines the physicality of a trade show? You know, is it about everybody walking around with GoPros on or something? You know, it was how you expand but keep the good things of a trade show. And I completely agree with the point that Rich made earlier, that actually, why do people go to trade shows and what are the benefits of them? It's probably not walking around seeing stuff that you could see online anyway, or that you've already come in contact with much of the time. It's instead meeting that guy, having that chat, spending time building up the relationships that are essential for business. And so I look at trade shows and think, I wonder how many are going to be pushed too early for the wrong reasons.
Yeah, I'd just like to interject there, because one of the things that we've discussed internally within 3H Media, and I've discussed with clients and has been reported in Lift Hoist International, is that those relationships that have been built up over years, that maybe started out at trade shows, for example, or visitations, you know, visiting people's or companies' sites. Okay, you're not, you know, then you get a lockdown. You can't travel, and that's pretty much global. If it wasn't for those relationships being what they were, that were bred out of things like trade shows, then things wouldn't continue to move on the way they had over the last few months. So I think there's a lot to be said for face-to-face meetings and the need to get them back online. And I know Rich is chomping at the bit to go to a show. I mean, we were laughing about it, saying that, you know, very often we say, oh, not another trade event, or, you know, not another reason to go to another annual conference. But I mean, we're missing them. And I think the industry's missing them, and they are vital. They're important to what we do.
Yeah, I think there's good ones and bad ones, and its balance is difficult. You're either doing a show every week, and half of them are bad, or this year you've done none at all. But yeah, we do need it. Look, the thing I miss that you can't do on Zoom, and forgive me if I've said it on Lifting Lowdown before, but it's the chance encounters. And okay, as a PR guy, we need that more than maybe some other businesses, but you can't function if every relationship you have or every connection is on the back end of a Zoom invitation.
Yeah.
You've got to, it's that, you know, all engaging all the senses, and someone saying, have you seen so and so over there, or have you seen what she's doing, or have you met this person? And we need it back 100%. And when I was talking a little bit about cleansing the marketplaces, I think it's definitely going to separate wheat from chaff in the trade show sector. So it's going to be very interesting to see how that all falls out. But no, look, absolutely, I think there's a future for face to face. I just don't think it's going to be people just going to make judgments before they do it, and that's not a bad thing.
No, indeed. Well, let's change gears a little bit. I mean, I think there have been positives to reflect upon, despite everything that's gone on. We talked about resilience, resourcefulness, but let's look towards 2021. Are you feeling optimistic, chaps? A leading question. I've just seen both your faces when I asked you that question. Unfortunately, our listeners don't have that pleasure, but it speaks volumes.
It's too, so I'm thought about this. It's too early for me to reflect fully on 2020 because where I am at the moment is, I think we were saying about a lot of firms in this industry, and in LEEA, we have to run it, make sure that there's money in the bank and stuff. So, but there's been a lot of really hard times, a lot of decisions, and a lot of grotty things that you'd rather not do. But there has been an element that we've probably got to where we want it to be quicker. In terms of 2021, I am optimistic because 2020 is not going to be replicated. I think that and if I go, I don't want to turn this into the LEEA show, but some of the things that we are doing that are great and will happen in 2021. So at the moment, I'm the chief executive of a global trade association, which is got members all over the world, but you can only do our training if you speak English. Clearly crazy.
Yeah.
Change in 2021. So got board clearance to spend on that's going to happen. So that if that's the only thing I ever did at LEEA whilst I was here, it would be a huge step forward. So
Agreed.
That's going to be translated. Our e-learning has done really well, but having looked at it, it's probably time for a refresh. So all of that's going to be refreshed, updated, content, presentation, language. So that is a massive thing that we will be proud of. But I'm delighted that the board's gone, yeah, all right, because I go to them and ask them for a lot of money, and they're like, but I'm thrilled about that.
Justify it.
Yeah. So and if any of the LEEA board, they don't spend money willy-nilly, so that's going to happen. At the last AGM, the chairman stood up and said, we don't see a future in the development member status that we've got at LEEA. We expect that will die in 2021. So to development member, you can sit on for 2 years at the moment. You join the association, you get the support to become a full member. There's always been this criticism that actually it's a safe port rather than moving on. So we've not been accepting any new development members. We've been progressing as many out. We expect in 2021 the board to take to the AGM a formal rule change that says not about that anymore. So that's exciting. The international work that we're doing, I'm in the process of developing regional councils so that, one of the criticisms of LEEA is that it's UK, but it calls itself global. Actually, the board have agreed that what we want to do is devolve stuff out to regions.
Yeah.
That will be devolved power over budgets. So it's not independence. So as a Scot, it's devolution, it's not independence. But so that's a fundamental shift in the model that we're operating, and it gives us a chance to do stuff better, but also do different things. So I am really looking forward to 2021, and I am optimistic about it. But then part of me is always, but how quickly are things going to change, and how much is it about working within current constraints?
Well, that's the $64,000 question, of course. Rich,
it has to be cautious optimism. It has to be cautious optimism. Optimism 100%, but it'd just be folly not to be cautious, because we've come through an incredible amount, and we've achieved a great deal to stay in the game doing whatever we're doing, and we've worked on long-term projects, haven't we? We've all done stuff on our businesses that we wouldn't have been able to do in a normal environment.
Isolated and innovated, as I say.
Yes,
something like that. Absolutely, Guy. And so yeah, optimism because of that. But I think certainly for quarter 1, till spring, we're in the same. You can call it 2021 if you like, but really, the bit where we change is the spring next year. I think.
And yeah, and that's absolutely true. Because I mean, I've been working on my budgets, and my budgets I'm working on by month. And
Okay.
January, February, March, not a lot of change from 2020. It's not until the spring next year that we're actually seeing a different year.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be the point in time that people look to, and I think trade shows up until then, I'm not so sure. I think if they go ahead, there's going to be so many things people have to do that they're not going to happen. I don't see people doing a lot of international travel, a lot of face-to-face stuff. We'll be sat here in February, March doing this by video call. I fear. But look, as a sector, I absolutely am encouraged. It's going to be interesting what happens to entertainment and retail and hospitality. I really hope they can get an absolute shot of adrenaline next spring, and they can recoup some of this. And I hope people do get back out there. There's certainly a lot of middle class people who've been doing nothing but walking the dog for much of the year, that have got to get back in the game quite quickly and find their place back in the economy, quite frankly. But yeah, look, optimistic, yes, but cautious. What about you, Guy? What is the feedback from and the barometer? The obvious barometer you've got is ad revenue and that kind of thing. So what are your clients telling you, and how are you shaping up for
Everyone I'm speaking to, Rich, is extremely upbeat, and I think that goes back again to the fact that the industry that we're in, or the industries that we serve, we're clearly a vital industry. Logistics, lifting, materials handling in whatever guise is used across just about every industry in the world, 24/7, 365, and that hasn't gone away. If anything, it's even ramped up. I mean, I speak to people all over the world, of course. I mean, but Australia comes into mind. We have a regional magazine, as you both know, Lift and Hoist Australasia, and Australia is really coming out of it. I mean, and they're hugely upbeat. Now they're going back to, no rules football matches, and there's an audience there. Border restrictions are being lifted. People are looking forward to, a social Christmas, not a socially isolated one. The economy's doing well. I mean, they're a little worried, in fact, that the Australian dollar's doing too well, because that could affect exports. So, I mean, I think we have to look to. I mean, look at China. What's going on in China? Of course. I mean, they have ridden the storm. So we are badly affected. America is still badly affected, but I think we all have to remain fairly optimistic. And I think most of our clients are, and they're looking to 2021 as a bit of a groundbreaker, really, in terms of coming out of this and spearheading, new successes, probably coming into it leaner, more aerodynamic, if I could use that term, more sort of fighting fit. So I think as an organisation we are. I think as an organisation, LEEA is, and I know for a fact that Bridger Howes have gone on, strength to strength, really. So I think we've got a lot of things to look forward to. And something I wanted to add, actually, before I forget, I'm sorry, because this might sound a little disjointed to our readers. GLAD, Global Lifting Awareness Day. We launched that, all of us as major stakeholders, obviously largely a LEEA initiative, but we were involved. The industry coming together and really getting behind that initiative and waving the flag for our industry, and looking ahead now to July 2021, GLAD 2021. I mean, that fills me with a lot of hope, I have to say.
Yeah, because you said something, Guy, at the start of your little segment there that I thought, I'm not sure that I agree with that. Where you're talking about the industry and how it's clearly a key industry to us. Yeah, it's clearly a key industry. But at the start of lockdown, I was getting UK members getting in touch with us saying, is there anything you can do to help? Because we're getting stopped by the police as we enter the City of London, going in to do inspections.
Okay.
And it was like, you don't recognize, it was, to us, it was like, well, that's crazy. But to a policeman that was, trying to maintain social distancing and lockdown, they didn't understand the absolute significance. And you won't remember because it was important to us, but we ended up getting Michael Gove to write.
I do remember, yeah.
We issued it to all of our members and said, just put this in the windscreen. It's got no legal basis at all, but they'll all heard of Michael Gove. But it was, and that feeds into the GLAD thing, that actually we have got a bit of an opportunity here to convince and show the rest of the world what we know, that actually we are crucial. The Nightingale Hospital didn't get built overnight without lifting stuff.
Indeed.
It didn't get taken down overnight without lifting stuff, but
Indeed.
and so there is something there that we can work on that actually shows how our industry permeates all these other crucial supply chains. So I think that's something I'm optimistic about, and think that GLAD will be a great vehicle for that.
We've got proof now, I suppose, haven't we? We've got proof both to the kind of, if there was any doubt among ourselves, just how, well, not doubt, but it's definitely been proven beyond any contestation that lifting equipment's absolutely as fundamental as we said it was when we first put out the tagline and overarching theme of GLAD. So no, I agree, Guy. That's absolutely one for the positive box. But we got to progress on it as well. And we've got to make sure that we build on it and use what we achieved last year and the pandemic to our advantage. So yeah, it's excited to get on with it. Sure. I mean, thank goodness it's in July and we're not right on the cusp of it.
Well, by that time, of course, Moderna, AstraZeneca, and all these other big pharmas will come to our aid. We'll all have the shot in the arm, and we'll be meeting up at Glastonbury or something. I mean, I said it almost tongue in cheek, but it's not the case. I mean, isolating and innovating. I mean, that's something certainly that LEEA's been doing, I feel. I mean, it's an extension of what you launched in your 75th year, Ross. But I mean, because we've spoken, of course, to Kat, haven't we, Rich, about the apprenticeships, and we've spoken before on Lifting Lowdown, Ross, about GLAD, for example, and then of course you have the Think Lifting campaign. All of these things are progressing nicely, or I get the sense that they are, and no matter what's going on with the pandemic, that hasn't sort of stunted the growth of those initiatives. And I get the sense that it's almost ready to hit the ground running. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, so we look. My view on launching stuff is it doesn't have to be complete when you launch it. So, for instance, Think Lifting, there is now a lesson in the bag, but we will be adding new experiments to it. So, for instance, during lockdown, I got my boy to do the pneumatic lift thing.
Yeah,
he absolutely loved it, and I also got him to do the bridge, and he really hated it.
Okay.
We'll add new stuff, and this will not progress, and we'll just have a big puddle of resources that we hope that kids and teachers use and all that sort of stuff. The apprenticeship, I've actually been working on it this morning. So the apprenticeship, the paperwork's all done, but it's now actually getting it delivered. And I've explained to you before, there's this strange relationship that a trade association cannot actually be involved. It has to be employers. So the employers, the Trailblazer Group, have done all the work, but they have got a job, all of them. And so LEEA has been putting its shoulder behind. And what I mean by that is actually me getting in touch with people saying to training providers, we've got this thing. Can you help us out and actually start delivering the thing? So I'll name one of them. So City of Bristol College, we've got a really good relationship. We've developed a college. We're going to a relationship. We're going to have a memorandum of understanding with them. They're looking at developing the right kit. They've got this amazing advanced manufacturing centre just off the Parkway. They want to be delivering this apprenticeship in that building. And so this is now about LEEA putting its shoulder behind the effort and actually being real and delivered. But then it also translates into, and this here's one for our Scottish listeners. I've now written to Scottish Government, loads and loads of people in the Scottish Government telling them that there's an issue and we want to help them work on it, not getting anywhere. And so it's only part of my job to work on an apprenticeship in England when I know for a fact I've got 80 LEEA members up in the northeast coast that want to be having apprentices taught and brought into their business, but at the moment there isn't the right provision. So it is my job to work with Scottish Government to get that changed. I'm not getting anywhere. So I probably need some air cover, some support, or some friendly listener to say, I'll introduce you to the right person.
Well, there we are. There's a call to action if I ever heard one. So let's start wrapping this up, guys. What are we all looking forward to next year in a nutshell? Let's start with you, Rich. I'm sure this is a very blindingly obvious question, and I can almost half guess the response, but even so, what are you looking forward to next year, mate?
Well, what did you expect me to say? I'm looking forward to a pint.
Well, that was one of the things I expected you to say.
I haven't actually gone teetotal this year, believe it or not. But look, normality, yes, 100%. And I think we've perhaps, it's interesting listening to Ross there. I know you want to wrap this up, but a lot goes on at the trade associations, and they're kind of working kind of in their industry, but very much on member value. And I think that as businesses, and certainly Bridger Houses, my company, we've spent more time working on it this year than we have in it. And what I'm looking forward to is seeing how all that stuff that we've implemented and put into it, how we leverage it next year. And I think a lot of people have done that. And some of that's kind of been done and it's locked in. Other stuff is good habits that we've got into. And I know other people have got into certain good habits as well. And the challenge is going to be maintaining them as we hope normality returns. But I feel, stronger and more resilient as a business and individually going into next year, 100%.
How about you, Ross? Thanks, Rich. How about you, Ross?
Yeah, I really like that. I'm going to write that down, on it and in it. I really like that sort of that distinction there. The thing that I'm really looking forward to is very straightforward, and it's probably something that I don't own LEEA. I am the custodian of it, but I am looking forward to not having that nervous feeling every month before your accounts come in. You can tell how things are going, how much of this is happening, how much of this is not happening. But certainly April, May were real months where it was, that sort of gut wrench at the bottom of your stomach. And I guess there's a lot of people out there that are running their own business and have their own skin in the game. I'm looking forward to getting just to that level of normality where management accounts aren't opened the way that you open a letter from HMRC.
Yes.
I'm just looking for some sort of de-stress when it comes to the 15th of the month and the management accounts come in.
You kind of said as much in LHI in the last edition, didn't you, about just wanting clarity, some sort of 2020 vision, looking ahead, 2 or 3 months or whatever. As for me, my part, I'm looking forward to doing a lifting Lowdown, a sort of live recording in a pub, with a pint in front of us and a packet of crisps, and and hopefully that will be happening before too long, because that was the kind of the spirit it was intended when we launched LL. So hopefully that's something that we can do in the not too distant future. But look, I want to thank you both enormously for all of your input throughout the course of this year, everything that you both do for our industry, and specifically for 3H and LHI and LHA. So thanks, chaps. Well done for weathering a brutal storm. And I wish you both a Merry Christmas and a fantastic 2021.
Thank you very much, Guy. I value the opportunity and the platform, and yeah, bring on next year.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, chaps. Be safe. This episode is a hard one to sum up. There were positive and negative points discussed in equal measure, and I'll leave it up to you to decide where your opinions lie. As Rich said, we'd love to hear from you, so please get in touch and let us have your thoughts. Thanks to Ross for returning with his current observations and association updates. And as ever, a huge thanks to Rich for his time and ongoing support of this programme. I think this, episode 10, was more in the spirit of how we intended Lifting Lowdown to be. An open, frank and free-form discussion. What do you think? As ever, feel free to leave comments or present any questions for me and our guests. Your feedback and suggestions for future editions will enable us to make this podcast even more relevant and interesting. You can keep up to date with the latest industry news by visiting LHI's website, liftandhoist.com. It just leaves me to thank you for listening and wish you all a happy holiday season and a healthy and successful new year. Look out for the next episode in January 21. Until then, stay safe.